My name is John. I'm 26 years old, working at a regular company after graduating from college. My family consists of my father, mother, and my younger brother, who is 4 years younger and will graduate from college this year. We are a very ordinary family, but we always have a lot of laughs. My brother is a great guy, and I respect my parents. Our home is so comfortable that I lived with my parents for a long time, but I moved out 3 years ago to experience living on my own. Even though I moved out, my parents' house is within driving distance, so we still often go out together or have meals as a family. Our bond hasn't changed even as we've grown up. I hope to build a family like that someday. I have a girlfriend now, and we've been together for 2 years. I'm thinking it might be time to get married. My girlfriend's name is Lily. We met at work. When I was a new hire, I went to the general affairs section for something, and she was at the reception desk. The moment our eyes met, I fell in love at first sight. After that, I found reasons to go to the general affairs section and tried to get her to notice me. I was actually rejected once, but my persistent efforts paid off. She is a genuinely cheerful person with a cute smile. Her eyes are big and bright, but they narrow to slits when she laughs. Seeing her smile always gave me a lot of energy. She's kind and considerate, so everyone around her liked her, and her smile made everyone else smile too. Despite her beautiful smile, she has a painful past. She doesn't have any family now. Her father passed away right after she was born. Her mother died from an illness when she was in the 7th grade. After losing both parents, she was taken in by her uncle, her mother's brother. They didn't have a good relationship, and she had only met him a few times at family gatherings. Her uncle took her in reluctantly, probably because her grandmother, who was getting old, thought it would be better for her to be with a family with kids her age. She suddenly found herself living with her uncle, aunt, and 2 cousins. She couldn't fit in with her cousins, who were going through puberty, and often felt like an outsider. After 3 years, the awkwardness never went away. When she became a high school student, she couldn't take it anymore and moved to her grandmother's house. Her grandmother had just entered a nursing home, so my girlfriend lived alone in her grandmother's house. Her grandmother was worried about her situation and tried to help her as much as she could. The house without her grandmother still had electricity and running water. She said that alone was a relief. She spent her 3 high school years living alone and working part-time jobs. But when she graduated, her grandmother passed away. Losing her only supporter, she couldn't stay in the house, so she moved out. She cut ties with her uncle's family and chose to find a job out of state, which is why she moved here. She joked that her uncle was probably relieved to be rid of the burden, but thinking about how hard she's worked all alone breaks my heart. I learned about her past after we started dating. I couldn't hide my surprise at how different her life had been compared to mine. She had such a beautiful smile that it never gave away her difficult past. After knowing this, I became even more determined to make her happy. She had rarely gone on trips or eaten out with her mother or her uncle's family. So, I took her to many different places. Zoos, aquariums, amusement parks, barbecue restaurants, sushi places, diners. She was delighted, and I was happy just to be able to go out with her. I fell deeply, genuinely in love with her as she smiled beside me. After 2 years of dating, I proposed to her, even though I thought it might be a bit early. She said yes, and we decided to get married. I think to myself that I grew up in a warm family. I was determined to create a similar family with her and make her happy. I believed my parents would cherish her too. When I introduced her to my parents, they were thrilled about our engagement. As expected, her smile made my parents smile too. Such a beautiful and sweet girl is marrying John. You better take good care of her, my mom said. My dad agreed, saying, "Yeah, you better," while chuckling, "Wow, John is finally getting married." Then, my dad suddenly remarked, "People say boys marry someone like their mom. Lily and your mom have a similar vibe." He compares the 2 of them and laughs. Really? I looked at them both. Now that you mention it. As I said that, I couldn't help but laugh. Certainly, they both had that same warm, gentle aura. I never realized it, but I felt a bit embarrassed. But both Lily and my mom were laughing, looking at each other. Mom said, saying she looks like me is an insult to Lily. But it must mean I'm still beautiful, which made my dad and me burst out laughing. That's how our announcement to my parents ended, in a warm and cheerful atmosphere. She also seemed to like them, saying, "Your parents are so kind and funny," which made me feel relieved. Until that moment, I didn't know anything. I thought that by becoming a family, I would make her happy. And I lived without doubting that the happiness in front of me was something I could take for granted. To prepare for the wedding, I went to the city hall. Wow, so this is how it looks. For the first time in my life, I held a copy of my family register. Because it was a necessary document. I picked it up just like that, but as I read through it from top to bottom, name, date of birth, I paused at a certain spot with unfamiliar characters. What does this mean? I muttered, swallowing hard. There was the word adoption written there. I found my parents' names. But next to them, it said adoptive father and adoptive mother. I looked over it again and again. Next to father and mother were names I didn't recognize. Next to my parents' names were the words adoptive father and adoptive mother. And the word adoption. I am adopted. I couldn't understand what was happening. My mind went blank, and I stood there in shock. By the time I realized it, I was sitting in the car parked in the parking lot of the city hall. I read the family register copy over and over again. I couldn't believe it no matter how much I tried. Old memories from my childhood started to flood back. Birthdays, graduation ceremonies, school entrance ceremonies, trips, ordinary family times. My dad and mom's smiles. And my brother's smile too. I had never doubted anything. I never once thought we might not be biologically related. Since when? Since when have I been adopted? Even looking at the date of adoption on the document, I had no recollection and couldn't believe it. The letters and numbers on the document started to blur and swirl in my mind, becoming indistinguishable symbols. Thinking about it didn't bring any answers. I was scared, but I wanted to know the truth. I called my dad, and he said he was at home. "Dad, I need to ask you something." "I'm going over now." I told him and headed to my parents' house. When I walked in, my parents greeted me as usual, but they seemed to sense something was wrong from my expression. I sat down in front of them and asked directly, "Am I adopted?" I handed them the copy of the family register. Their faces tensed for a moment, but when they looked at me, their eyes were teary. I waited for them to speak. Then my dad said, "We should have told you sooner." He muttered, "Right, you're getting married, you need to see your family register. I didn't raise you as an adopted child." I'd be lying if I said I forgot. But I should have thought about the right time to say it. "I'm sorry, John." My mom looked apologetic too. When I heard those words, I didn't know where my feelings were. Between the feeling of having to accept the reality that I really was adopted and that there was no mistake, and the feeling of wondering why. I asked, "Do you know who these people are?" referring to the names of my biological parents. My dad replied, "Yes, we know." Mom also nodded in agreement, saying yes. They looked at each other, cleared their throats, and began explaining why I was adopted. My biological mother was a childhood friend of my parents. My biological father was also friends with my mom and dad. My biological parents were excited about my birth. But my biological father died in a car accident just before I was born. My biological mother gave birth to me but was devastated by her husband's death and postpartum depression. She passed away shortly after. My biological parents had no close relatives except for an elderly grandmother. So, I was placed in a facility. At that time, my parents were newlyweds. Although they had been married for a year, they couldn't conceive. They were told by the doctor that they might not be able to have children. Then, they learned about the series of tragic events and that their friend's child, me, was in a facility. They had always watched over the childhood friend couple and me since I was born. When my parents couldn't stand it any longer, they decided to take me in. Although my grandparents were against it, my parents were determined, and they eventually adopted me. A few years later, my brother was born, and we became a family of 4. I see. I couldn't find any other words to respond with after hearing what they said. My dad said, "Even though we're not biologically related, you are our precious son." My mom said, "That's right. We felt the same way as your biological parents, maybe even more." "John, you're my precious son." Even though she said that, the fact that I was adopted was so shocking that I couldn't fully grasp their words. I think I sat there for a while, unable to speak. I always thought we were a truly close family of 4. But I was the only one not biologically related. The words "not biologically related" kept swirling around in my head. Why? I started to feel guilty towards my parents. Looking back, they had raised me with so much love. But thinking about how they raised someone else's child as their own, I didn't know how to process it. I was overwhelmed with mixed emotions. In the end, I couldn't sort out my feelings that day, and I left after just hearing the facts. "I'll come back," I told my parents as I left, and they looked at me with concern. When I got back to my place, I sat on the sofa and tried to organize my thoughts. Up until today, I had been truly happy. I had never once thought of myself as unhappy. But that happiness was built on the sacrifices of my parents. Even so, it's true that they never treated me differently from my biological brother and raised me with lots of love. Should I simply be grateful for that? Or should I apologize for being an unknowing burden? Now that I know I'm adopted, I'm an adult. Can I still stay in that house as their son? Or should I continue as their son and repay them for raising someone else's child? My mind was in turmoil. Then, I thought of Lily. Can I make her happy? I felt ashamed for even thinking that. What do I mean? I want to marry her and make her happy. I grew up not knowing I was adopted, living comfortably. Bring her into my warm family? Build a family with her? Does someone as inadequate as me have the right to do such a thing? I realized I was deluding myself into thinking I could make her happy. Who did I think I was? I was given a happy place, yet, I thought, could I make someone else happy? What was I thinking? There's no way someone like me could make her happy. What should I do? My family. Lily. What is right? What choices should I make? What is normal? I couldn't figure anything out, and I buried my head in my hands and cried. Then, I got a call from Lily. I stared blankly at my phone screen until the call ended. 5 seconds later, she called again. "Hello?" I answered, but my voice wouldn't come out. Lily immediately sensed something was wrong from my tone. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" I could only respond with a nodding sound. "You're at home, right?" "I'll be right there," she said, rushing over to my place. "What happened? What's wrong?" She saw my tear-streaked face and, though she must have been shocked, she spoke calmly and gently rubbed my back to comfort me. I told her everything honestly. I showed her the family register copy and told her all my feelings. She listened quietly, nodding as she looked into my eyes. "I feel so pathetic. After telling you all this, I don't know what to do. I've lost the confidence to make you happy. I'm sorry for being like this." As I spoke, she remained silent, rubbing my back and seemed to be thinking deeply. Then she asked, "Can I say what I'm thinking? Is blood relation really that important?" That's what she asked me. After all, we're strangers to each other, right? But we're going to become husband and wife, become a family. Do you understand what I'm saying? And think about your dad, mom, and brother. Just seeing the word adoption makes everything false? Was it that fragile? No, right? As you said, they raised you with so much love even though you're not biologically related. They were a warm family, and you grew up in that environment. She spoke to me slowly. I felt as if everything that had been swirling in my mind was slowly melting away. Her words were gradually sinking in. Then she looked into my eyes and asked, "What about me? Does being a stranger mean I can't become part of your family?" I couldn't answer immediately, and she placed her hand on my chest. "What about here? Am I the only one here?" She looked straight into my eyes. Lily. The words wouldn't come out. But she was in my heart. Yet, I couldn't say it confidently. I can't make Lily happy right now. Tears fell as I couldn't put my feelings into words. Then she started to cry too. It was as if she could hear my heart. "Even so, my heart can't belong to anyone but you." Her voice trembled. A few days later, I visited my parents' house. "Hey, welcome back, John." My brother came running out with a big smile. "Yeah, I'm back." Though I was a bit nervous, seeing his face made me relax. My dad and mom came out from inside. "Welcome back. We've been waiting for you." When they saw me, they looked relieved. Before going inside, I had to tell them something. "Dad, Mom, up until now, I got choked up and couldn't continue. I wanted to apologize and express my gratitude, but I didn't know how." Then my dad said, "We understand. We know," and gently took my hand. My mom added, "John, coming here today says it all," holding back tears as she took my hand too. Even without saying anything, they understood. Seeing us holding hands, my brother smiled, though he probably knew what had happened. But he pretended not to know and said, "Hey, what's going on? Let me join too," and added his hand to ours. What does it matter that I was adopted? The 26 years I've lived are everything. The warmth of our hands held together contained all the answers. On a sunny day, Lily and I got married. On our way back from submitting the marriage registration, we stopped by my parents' house to share the news. "Congratulations. Take care of John from now on." Mom and Dad also looked happy. Seeing everyone's faces, a wave of joy and all the worries I had felt came rushing over me. I had something important to say to everyone. "Dad, Mom, put your hands out. You too, Michael. And you, Lily." Saying that, I placed everyone's hands on top of my left palm. Then, I put my right hand on top. I looked around at everyone, who had puzzled expressions on their faces, one by one. And then, I said cheerfully, "Thank you." Smiles spread across everyone's faces. I vowed to never forget the warmth I felt at that moment. And to keep nurturing that warmth. To keep everyone warm with my own warmth. I made that promise. How was it? Please subscribe to the channel, it really encourages us to keep creating. See you in the next video.